Welcome to Suthichai Live English. Kun Kantati Supamongkol, the former foreign minister of Thailand, has just come back from the United States. He was our guest last time when we started Suthichai Live English. And now, since he has gathered so much experience and lots of discussions with prominent people around the world, I would like him to enlighten us on the latest development from where he has been, such as the United States. And of course, the big story about the Ukraine war is that Switzerland is hosting the so-called Peace Summit between the 15th and the 16th of June, which means it's about next week or so. I think the important question for Thailand is, should we attend or not, and why? Hello, คุณกันตทีครับสวัสดีครับ
สวัสดีครับคุณสุทธิชัยครับ
Welcome home again. You have been on and off the screen. And I think it's very important that you update us on what you have seen around the world. Your latest trip was in the United States, right?
Well, actually, I had meetings around the world.
Around the world.
It started in Singapore. I also saw the outgoing Prime Minister of Singapore, others, and then had to rush to the U.S. to attend a board meeting of the RAND Corporation.
And
it was my shortest stay in the U.S. because I had to then rush on to Germany and Switzerland. So I was in the U.S. for only 4 days.
I see. Yeah. But how is it there? The election campaign seems to be going full steam now with President Biden and Donald Trump neck and neck, right, in the polls.
Yes, it looks like what you have described. It's neck and neck, which makes a lot of people nervous. I have talked to many American friends who are actually leaving the U.S. And they felt that if Trump wins, then the U.S. would not be a place for them to live anymore. So we have seen an upsurge of Americans moving to many European countries.
Really?
In the last, actually, it started in the last 4 years, or actually maybe a bit longer, during the Trump time. And but now I heard that there is an escalation of Americans exiting the U.S. So it's a phenomenon that we have not seen before.
About 8 years ago, when Trump was beginning to run the White House, some Americans, this was called an exodus to Canada, and Europe.
Canada. But now Europe. And some are actually, some asked me about Thailand. And so
right.
And this is going to be one of the critical election, because if Trump wins, he will be unhinged.
Yeah.
And he will focus on retribution. He will focus on punishing those who he perceives as enemies. He would replace the heads of U.S. government departments, with his people.
Yeah.
And what he has done, what he's trying to do now, since he had been convicted by 34 counts, criminal counts in New York, he's trying to actually damage the reputation of the U.S. justice system.
Yeah.
And what he did 3.5 years ago, he damaged the democracy by not admitting defeat when the results came. You know, the heart of democracy is when the losers accept the results.
Yeah.
But now Trump has set this new precedent that maybe he would actually say that it was rigged. And so the trust in the democratic institutions in the U.S. has eroded substantially. And then he said that if he loses, he would not he hinted that there would be a bloodbath. Now that's his term, bloodbath.
Wow.
And so it looks a bit grim, the U.S. And it's also quite a concern that many people in America, many Americans, don't really see this coming. Some are saying it, but many are focusing on other issues, and so they will vote in accordance with their perception of different issues, maybe local issues, pocketbook issues.
Yeah.
So that's a problem, because this is an election which will decide regarding the survival of U.S. democracy.
That's right. How do you explain the fact that despite the guilty verdict against Trump, people still vote for him?
Because he has a strategy of identifying himself as the victim of the system. And there is a large amount of Americans who feel that they have been taken advantage of by the system, by globalization, and by the capitalist system. So he is, and including criminals. So he's now identifying himself with criminals. He said that he would pardon those who attacked Capitol Hill.
Yes, that's terrible, right? I mean, unimaginable, right?
Yes, and in Europe, they're very nervous too, because if Trump comes back, what Trump has done in his first 4 years in office was to destroy the reliability of the U.S. The U.S. used to be seen as a reliable country.
Yes.
Agreements with the U.S. meant an agreement to be enforced. But Trump threw away many agreements, including the one with Iran. And he has destroyed that trust that the Europeans had in the U.S. and, of course, for us too. So it's a very serious situation for the U.S. I would say that it's one of the most serious after the Civil War.
Oh, really?
Very serious. It's existential threat to democracy in the U.S. It's very serious.
How would you see Trump's return to the White House affecting this region of the world, our region, Asia, Taiwan, ASEAN, South China Sea, North Korea, Russia, China?
As far as our region is concerned, it's not going to be impacted as severely as in Europe, because he has said that on many occasions that he would be willing to have the U.S. pull out of NATO.
Oh, yeah.
So he said that on many occasions. And of course, they're trying to work on rules and regulations to make it hard for him to do that on Capitol Hill.
Yep.
And for us, I think the issues concerning us may not be too different initially. The U.S. will continue to pursue the freedom of navigation rights in the South China Sea. The conflict with China will continue. And so relations with Thailand may be okay for now. It would be similar to the relationship that we had during the time of Trump's first term.
Right.
So I don't expect something too drastic. However, the world situation with the U.S. is going to have a major impact.
Yeah. How would China look at Trump coming back? The trade war will loom.
Well, China has been unhappy with Biden.
Yeah.
So,
right.
Yes. So, what China sees in Trump is that he will lose friends in Europe. And so that may make it easier to handle Trump. One trick to handle Trump well, and this may apply to Thailand too, is to psychologically praise him to say how good he is. He really cares about that.
I see.
He cares about that a lot. So if you do that a lot, then you'll be on his good side.
But I'm not even sure that he, knows ASEAN that well. I don't think he's interested in this part of the world because his major interest would be in Europe, NATO, China, Russia. He said he would end the Ukraine war in 24 hours.
He would make Putin very happy.
Yeah.
Because he has been seen by many as someone who is unpredictable. But I think one thing that is predictable from his past, and you saw that for the 4 years, was that a lot of the policies that he implemented in the US favored Russia.
Right.
The weakening of NATO, the weakening of US European relations, the division within the US that he created, the hatred among Americans, all those things are good for Russia.
Yes.
The weakening of the justice institution in the US, the law enforcement, as well as the courts, all those things are beneficial to Russia. And he has condemned most world leaders, but he has consistently not condemned Putin at all.
Oh, right.
So one thing is that it's predictable that he will have a policy which will be actually in something that Putin would be happy about.
Right. Also, yesterday, the election to the European Parliament shows that the far-right surge is quite serious.
Quite substantial.
Quite substantial.
Yes. In fact, if you look at the key countries, Germany and France, that's a concern. They don't have the majority yet. But in Parliament, it is expecting they are expecting the right-wing groups to win roughly 1/4 of the European Parliament. So that's quite a serious gain. Last time, the last elections, they won about 1/5 already. So now it's going up to 1/4. So that's something that the Europeans are very concerned about too. When I was in Germany, I went to Mannheim. And in Mannheim, there was just a short time before I arrived, they had a police killing by an Afghan immigrant. Now, what happened there was that there was a more or less a rally amongst right-wing members. And so there was a speaker who was advocating right-wing policies. And this Afghan man wanted to hurt him. So he managed to hurt the speaker. He managed to hurt a few more people, but he ended up killing a police officer. And all this with a knife.
Just not
yeah, and that happened last week.
No.
So there is a call now among the right-wing groups, especially this party that they have in Germany called the Alternative for Germany.
Yes, alternative.
Which gained some support even during this election. They're now calling for the expulsion of immigrants from the Middle East.
Wow.
Even those who had attained legal residential status, as well as those who may have become citizens, they want to go back and expel them. So it's radicalizing. And as you heard, the French president has called for an election. It's called for an immediate election.
Right.
In light of this situation, he feels that the people have to go back and decide again.
It's a big gamble for Macron because
it's a big gamble.
He might lose.
Well, it's not a presidential election. So he's safe there, but it's a parliamentary election. In France, that's separate. So the president does not come from parliament. So his position as president will remain, but it would be weakened. If the results come out the way that he would not like.
Why would he do that when the wave is on the far right wing side, and he knew that calling an election now would affect his party's standing in parliament?
That's right. And this is actually the question that many French people are asking. Many people were surprised.
Right.
And so they're wondering about the wisdom of doing that now, in particular. But it seemed like a very quick decision.
Very quick, because the results of the European Parliament elections were yesterday, Sunday.
Yes.
Right? And then he decided almost immediately that he would dissolve Parliament and go back to the people. Usually you do that when you're in power, when you are confident of a victory.
Usually, yes. That's how the parliamentary system was designed.
Yeah. But this is not the case. Yes. His party is losing support.
Yes.
And Marine Le Pen, right, is gaining substantially.
Yes.
So interesting.
Yes, and so these two countries are the main, and the European Parliament has 720 seats.
Yes.
Now you have that one fourth to the right wing.
So it's yeah. Now, if we look at the scenario where Trump comes back in the White House,
yes,
and European politics turn far right, you see a global, surge towards the right, clearly, don't you think? And that
yes, surge towards the right. And there, it's clear it's going towards the right. Trump presents himself as far right, but he's actually just far Trump.
Far Trump.
See, the European far right would be probably against Russia to a good degree.
Yeah,
but Trump's version of right wing is actually to be in favor of Russia.
Yeah.
But also the KKK too. So,
yeah, I know. It's just so unimaginable that American politics will turn a very big corner, and we don't know what will happen after that.
And this justice system in the U.S. was going so slowly. 4 years to manage all the crimes that he had done, because one thing about Trump was that he did not have an ability to hide his crimes. He did things in broad daylight.
Yeah.
Yet they cannot do anything to him. The justice system is working very slowly, and the separation of power between the executive branch and the judicial branch is compromised because the president appoints the Supreme Court justices. And when you have that situation, Trump knew that all he had to do was to have the right judges to serve him, and that has happened. The Supreme Court has decided to delay his more serious criminal cases. And there was another federal judge who has also delayed his case indefinitely to wait for the results of the election, because he feels that if he wins, then he can make all these cases disappear by appointing the right person to the job.
Incredible. The system of checks and balances doesn't exist there.
Well, it's hard to exist properly when the executive branch appoints the judicial branch. So it becomes a problem already.
Right.
So very serious, much more serious than the problems in Thailand.
Now, I think somehow the war in Ukraine will be affected one way or the other.
Yes.
The far right surge in European politics and the prospect of Trump coming back Now, this peace summit being held in Switzerland, and Zelensky has been lobbying around the world. He even came to Singapore for the Shangri-La dialogue and asking a lot of countries, including ASEAN countries, to attend. What do you think Thailand should do? Where should we stand on this?
Well, I'll tell you briefly now what I think about Thailand's position should be, and then we can go into details about the nature of this peace conference.
Yes.
This peace conference is actually an attempt to gain support for Ukraine, especially his 10-point peace proposal. It was a 10-point peace formula that he had proposed, and it had been rejected by Russia. And so the basis now it's hidden, so they're not going to put this at the forefront. But the substance of the discussion will actually touch on this proposal that he has made, which Russia has rejected. Russia rejected outright because of one particular point, and that was in the proposal, it called for the unconditional and total withdrawal of Russian forces completely, from Ukraine since the start of the war. So that condition is a condition which Russia has rejected. So, but regarding, before we go a bit deeper into that, the Thai position is a delicate balance. So it's a little delicate balance, but what I think would be the most appropriate one would be to attend, because but the level would become crucial. So we should attend this conference because we, of course, object to the invasion, the violation of international law and the UN Charter, and everything else that goes with the aggression. So we have a reason to attend, but we should not go at the summit level. So not at the leaders. Our prime minister should not go. And in fact, our members of the cabinet should not go. And so
our ambassador?
The Swiss and the Ukrainians and the Europeans have thought of that. So at this point in time, they rejected that. Those countries that have proposed that the ambassadors would attend have been rejected with the message saying that we want ministers to come.
Okay.
So luckily in Thailand, we have positions which
equivalent to the minister, but
well, it calls itself minister, but it's not to the level of cabinet.
Okay.
So it's vice minister. It's not deputy foreign minister, but vice minister, which means that it's lower than the cabinet, but it has that terminology as minister.
Right. Okay.
And so that position would be appropriate. And so it's a lower than cabinet level, and it is similar to what the Singaporeans have decided.
Yeah. Who is going?
They have appointed a person who has the title of Minister of State for Foreign Affairs, which is similar to Vice Minister for us. Minister, it's not Foreign Minister, but Minister
of State
for Foreign Affairs. And on top of that, to make the Europeans happier, the person was also given the title of special representative of the prime minister. So I understand that the Thai government is doing the same.
Okay.
So we are sending the vice minister
for foreign affairs.
Yes, for foreign affairs, Kun Rat, and then Ambassador Rat, and he's now vice foreign minister, and he will go also as a representative of our prime minister. So that would make the Europeans happy, and it doesn't hurt the relations that we have with the Russians. Because at this point, I understand that countries that have said yes are about 110 out of 160.
America sending Vice President Kamala.
Yes, that is a major disappointment for Zelensky, because he had expected America to have President Biden to go. But it's significant that the U.S. is sending the Vice President and the National Security Advisor together. But not President Biden. So that is significant. Most of the heads of governments and heads of state that will go will be Europeans. And so what it is at this point is that the invitation was not offered to the Russian. So that's one difficulty.
The Chinese are not coming. The Chinese are not coming either.
The Chinese have decided not to come with that very explanation. The Chinese said that we cannot come to a peace conference without the participation of one side of the conflict, right? So, to the Chinese, if the Russians would be attending, then the Russians would, then the Chinese would go.
Okay.
And so the Russians have not been invited. They on the other side, Switzerland has said that the Russians has not displayed any interest. But I think the main aim at this point for this conference is to consolidate the support for Ukraine from the developing world. So that's the main aim. So that's why countries in Latin America, countries in Africa, and countries in Asia, the term Global South, the Global South, and we are part of that. Thailand is part of that. Is the focus of this conference, and the conference will be rather short. It's about just two days.
Yes.
It is not envisioning countries to give prepared speeches. They feel that it will be interactive, and those who, when it's interactive, then there'll be many countries which will probably not speak.
Yes.
They said that if a country wants to have a national statement, then they can do that with a video, and they will include that, a few minutes, maybe 3 or 4 minute video. They also came out with subjects to discuss, and one would be the nuclear safety, which is a very important issue, and that will be discussed. Another one would be the release of prisoners, as well as protection of, I would say, children who had been abducted by the Russians and crossed the border. But one interesting one for Thailand to participate in is the discussion on food safety and food security. Security, mainly security, which means freedom of navigation to export wheat, for example, from Ukraine. So food security is something that I think would be the most appropriate for Thailand to focus on, because we can do something concrete. And when we talk to the Russians, we could say that, well, we went, but we did not go at the leaders level. He went and participated at a lower level. So the Russians will probably not make a big fuss out of this. But don't expect anything concrete to come out of this conference, because it is designed to build up support for Zelensky, because the next time they have another meeting, which may happen in the next few months, would include the participation of Russia.
I see.
This is actually a preparation, a numbers game.
Number.
They're going to count how many countries attend, and they're also going to count at what level. At what level? So I heard that from ASEAN now, up to this minute, only Thailand and Singapore will be attending. Others have been instructed to apply to attend at the ambassadorial level, and that has been rejected so far. So
Indonesia, Malaysia.
So far up to right at this minute, no, because many other ASEAN countries were willing to participate at the ambassadorial level.
Yes.
And the organizers up to now still reject that, saying that no, we want ministers.
Ministers, yeah.
Yes. So that's the point that we are at now.
Right.
Now the background of this conference is quite interesting too. Ukraine had asked Switzerland to host, and it is being supported by Western and the European countries. Not only Western now, but European countries. So this is an attempt to more or less enhance the international support by bringing in the global South. So that's the key. So they're not expecting any forward movement towards peace, but this would be to consolidate the bargaining chips, their bargaining power, when they will actually, hopefully, negotiate with Russia.
When the actual negotiations begins.
Yes, Russia at this point has of course rejected this conference and have tried to highlight the fact that they have accepted the Chinese proposal. The Chinese have a 12-point proposal. But the Chinese proposal was based on principles and not too many concrete action at this point. But the principles were principles that we all accept, sovereignty, territorial integrity, among all those things. So they're willing to do that. The Russians are willing to go with the Chinese proposal as a basis to begin negotiations, but not the Zelensky. Also, so that's where we are now. At this point. And so I think it's the right thing for Thailand to send our vice minister there as a representative of the prime minister.
Should we make any statement there?
No. In fact, since they discourage statements, it would be interactive. So it would mean that during the discussion, anyone can bring up, their hands and say, I want to say something about this point or that point. So it would be something like that more than a statement.
Well, we can say harmless things like, ceasefire, peace.
Yes,
whatever,
we certainly can. It would be more like spontaneous interaction during the meeting.
But the political trend in Europe, with the far right surge, you think that could have an impact on the conference itself, that the atmosphere may be a bit edgy, anxiety?
No, I think that probably won't have an impact on the conference. The surge is not going to the majority line. So the centrists still have the control.
Yes.
The surge is just that it's the right-wing supporters are increasing, but they're not at the majority point by any means.
No.
What they're concerned about is the disruption by Russia. So they're concerned about cybersecurity and all those other things.
Right.
But I don't expect anything much. But they're concerned about how Russia would react.
But Putin last week in his annual press conference in St. Petersburg,
yes,
it was quite tough in his statements about if America sends in weapons and allow the Ukrainians to use the weapons against targets in Russia, we would not hesitate to supply weapons to our friends to attack your positions too, this sort of thing. And, with the French and German leaders saying that we're going to move closer to Ukraine, we're going to even train their pilots and all this. Don't you think that Putin is raising the stake? Why this peace conference is trying to bring it down?
Yes, Putin.
Directions.
Well, the competition now would be, I think the best way to describe it would be at two levels.
Yes.
One would be the military level on the ground.
Right.
And the other one is this peace conference,
yes.
Which is taking place. That is the diplomatic level to consolidate support from the international community. Putin is a negotiator. And he knows how to deter to a degree. He makes the other side afraid. But if you go back to just over 2 years ago, the talks were still going on, and Russia had not invaded yet.
Yes.
But there was a threat of invasion. To me, the better way to negotiate is to tell Putin that if you invade Ukraine, even though Ukraine is not part of NATO, but we would not rule out any military reaction. But what President Biden did was to rule out military reaction from the US as well as from NATO, and focus only on economic sanctions. Now, Putin was not really afraid of economic sanctions, but he would have been a bit more deterred if the military response had not been taken off the table. Now, it doesn't mean that the US or NATO would have to go through and use military response, but to rule it out meant that in Putin's risk analysis, he ruled out, so it became cheaper for him.
Yeah.
See, that was the problem. And then, but on top of that, he went on to say that this is President Biden, and the message, the bigger message was that since Ukraine was not part of NATO, we would not protect Ukraine by force. But Ukraine was applying for NATO membership. Now, if you look at Putin's mind, it meant that, oh, well, then this is the opportunity to do it now. The window is closing, because if Ukraine becomes a member of NATO, then we would not be able to invade without a strong military response from NATO. So inadvertently, the message to Putin was mixed, and it actually may have encouraged him to invade. So Putin does not use this approach. He knows that the West is very concerned about nuclear reaction. Right. So he uses the nuclear card in his announcements.
Right.
So he's not. What he's doing is exactly that. He is not ruling out anything.
No, he's not.
Whereas the U.S. initially, before the invasion, ruled out the use of force to protect Ukraine. Yeah.
Right.
So that is a lesson for negotiators to learn and discuss.
Putin can wait until the end of the year after the election in America, right? To see who's in charge.
Yes, there is an incentive for Putin to wait now. Because if Trump becomes president, then the equation will change all.
Oh, yeah, the equation will change drastically. Yes. So very interesting to keep a close watch.
Yes.
And at the same time, you have been to Singapore, you have been to Europe. in ASEAN, we have new leaders in so many countries. Thailand,
Yes.
new prime minister. Singapore has just, Lawrence Wong, and Cambodia just had a new prime minister as well. Indonesia's a new leaders coming up as well. So it's all the new faces in ASEAN, right?
Yes.
Interesting.
Yes. And ASEAN has a good opportunity
Yes.
to continue the work if ASEAN unity can be maintained. And there are some cracks with that.
Right.
Within ASEAN. So we need to emphasize the need to have a unified ASEAN. ASEAN is in a unique situation and has opportunities to contribute substantially to world peace, actually. Our architecture, the ARF and other mechanisms that we have created, the ASEAN +1, ASEAN +3, ASEAN Summit, East Asia Summit,
Right.
and all those mechanisms can be used.
Right.
So ASEAN needs to have constructive policies and be proactive.
Yeah.
We can contribute a lot.
Yeah, we have to talk about ASEAN and the Myanmar crisis sometime.
Yes, that's a continuation of the problem, and sad. It's very sad.
Very sad.
Yes.
Okay, I'd like to ask you to come back to talk about that for the whole hour about Myanmar and ASEAN. Thank you today. Thank you very much, Kun Kantati.
My pleasure. It's good to see you.
To see you, of course. Yes. สวัสดีครับ สวัสดี
ส
ค
วัส
รับ
ดีครับ
ติดตามสุทธิชัยไลฟ์กับผมทุกวันเช้าสายบ่ายเย็นมีเรื่องร้อนเรื่องวิเคราะห์เรื่องสัมภาษณ์เรื่อง Exclusive ต้องที่นี่ที่เดียวครับไปติดตามผมใน Facebook 2เพจสุทธิชัยยุ่นกับสุทธิชัยไลฟ์และอย่าลืม YouTube ครับ YouTube ไปกด Subscribe ที่สุทธิชัยไลฟ์กด Subscribe แล้วกดกระดิ่งเตือนคุณทันทีที่สุทธิชัยไลฟ์มาในมือถือคุณนอกนั้น Twitter ไปกดติดตามและ TikTok ครับ TikTok ล่าสุดนั้นสามารถที่จะถ่ายทอดสดสุทธิชัยไลฟ์ให้ทุกท่านติดตามได้เช่นกันสุทธิชัยไลฟ์ anywhere anytime สุทธิชัยไลฟ์คือเพื่อนที่เล่าข่าววิเคราะห์ข่าวสามารถทำให้ท่านทันข่าวทุกวินาทีจากนี้ไปครับ